Every time we think the Milwaukee Brewers are going to go away and die, that the injuries and everything else is going to catch up with these guys, well, what happens? They come out and they take two straight in Atlanta, go for the series sweep, and just play two great games against the Braves. We'll get to all that coming up next on this edition of Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Wow, just two great victories last 2 days in Atlanta. You know, just when you think you're at your lowest low, they had lost 6 of 9. They bounce back and they get two terrific victories against the Braves on the road. Good to have you along. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Thank you all you everydayers for making Locked On Brewers your first listen to every day. I get up and I see that, you know, we have several hundred people downloading the podcast right off the bat in the early morning hours. Whether it's the audio version or watching us on YouTube, I appreciate that. We'll tell you how to get to all our content one way or the other because we're on various platforms. We'll tell you about that a little bit later on here in the podcast. My name is Chuck Freeman, longtime sportscaster here in the state of Wisconsin and proud host of Locked On Brewers. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, use that promo code Locked On MLB, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply with Game Time. All right, yeah. You know, the Brewers had lost 6 of their last 8 series since the 4th of July weekend. And they really had not lost much in the standings. You know, they still had their 5.5, 6 game lead in the standings, but they weren't playing very well. They were kind of meandering and, you know, losing 2 of 3 in Washington this past weekend. We were going into the off day thinking, all right, where are we headed? What's going on with this team? Is the end coming? And I think we've thought that a few times this year, but every time we think that's going to happen, they surprise us and they pull themselves out and they play some terrific baseball. Case in point, these last 2 days, they come off the off day on Monday and they win 10-0 on Tuesday in Atlanta. You think, holy cow, they shut out the Braves. The Braves get shut out 2 nights in a row because they had lost on Sunday. They had been beaten at home by Miami. So Brewers win 10-0 on Tuesday. Then they come right back Wednesday, get down early. Peralta gives up the 2 runs in the first inning, and we're thinking, all right, because we're conditioned to think this way with the Milwaukee Brewers. All our sports teams in Wisconsin, but especially teams like the Brewers, that they have a way of just cutting our hearts out. The Milwaukee Brewers, let's face it. You all know that they have a way of just building us up and then just cutting our hearts out. They have that way of doing it. So here it is. Brewers facing Chris Sale. Peralta gives up that 2-run first inning, and you're thinking, oh boy, where is this headed? You know, Peralta does not look good. And the Brewers bounce back. Another 16-hit attack for a second day in a row, and they get the win 8-5 over the Braves. Wow. 18 runs, 32 hits in 2 days in Atlanta against the Braves, who I think are one of the better teams in the National League. I know that there's at times you look at the Braves and you figure, why are they only 9-10 games over the 500 mark? What's going on there? 8 games over. But I still think, man, they just haven't found their way. And yeah, I did say in the podcast, I think the Braves are a better team. The Braves took 2 of 3 in Milwaukee last week. And I was saying Sunday night on the podcast, man, the Brewers somehow got to find a way to take 2 of 3 in this series against Atlanta. Little did we know, they'd win the first 2 games. Now for a chance for a 3-game sweep a little bit later on this morning. Early start, we'll tell you about that here in a little bit. But they get the series win. Amazing with these guys, because we keep thinking, yeah, that the injuries, losing Christian Yelich, all that is going to catch up with these guys. But here we are, early August, and it still hasn't. they still continue to bounce back. I don't take anything ever for granted with the Milwaukee Brewers. I don't take this division at all. They got a 6-game lead now in the division on St. Louis. I don't take that for granted at all. Not at all. No, and of course, you guys who are Brewers fans, especially you guys who've been around Brewer fans for a long, long time, like I have, know nothing you should take for granted with these guys. But man, I mean, 2 back-to-back. Those are 2 of the best back-to-back games I've seen all year. 2 of the best. I'm not, entertaining, yes, but just thorough, solid victories against a good team. Reminded me about the team early in the season. They were getting victories, a couple of games like that. They get some victories like that. It's been a while since they have 2 thorough victories against back-to-back against a good team like the Atlanta Braves. 2 poundings on the road. 10-0 and 8-4. Man, these guys, I'm telling you, every time we think we're going to count them out, unbelievable. Rhys Hoskins, saw this on the internet. His batting average over the last 15 games. I knew it was good. Over his last 15 games, he's batting .315. He is quietly heating up. He was one of 4 players to have 3 hits on Wednesday night. How about Joey Ortiz? Well, Joey Ortiz had the neck injury. Murphy talked about him at the press conference tonight after the game. Ortiz was playing great. Talked about him for being on the All-Star team. Came up with had a neck that was bothering him in June. Went on the injured list. Came back, struggled. Some hard hit outs, some loud outs. But here he is on a roll again. He had 3 hits. And he seems like Ortiz is putting things back together. And he's more like the player we saw in May and into the early part of June. How about Blake Perkins? We almost forget about Blake Perkins on this team, right? We almost forget about him. I mean, he made that nice catch last week, but he was so good early this season. Perkins bounced back, and I believe he's got pretty good numbers against Chris Sale. Bounced back, and he had 3 hits on Wednesday night. Oh, and by the way, Jackson Chourio, should we be surprised? He was the 4th guy to have 3 hits. Chourio, Perkins, Ortiz, and Hoskins. Chourio, by the way, with the 3 hits, now pushed his batting average to .272, and he's got 10 multi-hit games in his last 14. Last 14 games he's played in, 10 multi-hit games. Wow. Maybe he is putting himself in the conversation for the Rookie of the Year. Just continues to go out there and just be impressive. Saw somebody tweet out the other day, who's the one guy on the Brewers you have to stop and watch when he's at the plate? Jackson Chourio. Is he the guy who you just, when he's at the plate, whatever you're doing, you're making dinner, you're cooking on a grill, you run in the house and see what Jackson is going to do. I was cooking some hamburgers the other day in Washington, came out. The Brewers were in Washington. I was at my house, was listening on the radio while I was outside grilling out some hamburgers. And then I came in, had to see Chourio bat. What is that guy going to do? Wow. I just can't say enough about how great of a signing that was. And yeah, we've had guys with Chourio, like Chourio, come through way back. Remember Pat Lishdash, Rookie of the Year in 1992? Nowhere to be found after that. But we'll see. But Chourio, I like to think he's got more talent than a guy like Pat Lishdash and a lot of other guys that come through who've started strong and finished weakly. Chourio is highly touted, and I think this is the real deal. But those 4 guys, Hoskins, Ortiz, Perkins, Chourio, all doing the job. And in this game, the Brewers had to come back twice. They were down 2-0 and 4-3. They put up a 3-run 6th inning to come back from a 4-3 deficit, and they really got to Chris Sale. Chris Sale, I don't have to tell you this. Chris Sale is a Cy Young Award winner, great pitcher, one of the best pitchers in baseball for a reason. And the Brewers just had great approaches against that guy. Amazing that sometimes the Brewers will have these great approaches against a guy like Chris Sale, and then some no-namer will come from nowhere and pitch 7 shutout innings just being called up from AAA. It's funny how that always happens with the Brewers. But Hey, I'll take it. They got the Chris Sale, and they didn't beat him last week, but they beat him this week. Freddie, on the other hand, Freddie was not good, I thought. 8 hits, 5 innings, 4 runs. They got him out of there. He was about ready to take the loss in that game. And Freddie did get the win. But Freddie was looking, and Freddie stuck around. He pitched 93 pitches. It was the end of the night. Freddie did not have good stuff. I didn't think he was all that good. But thank God, the bullpen. I thought Mears settled things down in the 6th inning, because this might have been a 9-8 game, back and forth. But Mears settled things down. Piamps is starting to look good again. All right, quietly looking good, like his last 8 or 9 performances. I feel like Piamps has come in there and done a nice job. I think that struggle that he might be past that now. Piamps has just given him some good innings. And then Koenig came in. So those 3 guys right there, Mears, Piamps, and Koenig. And then Devin Williams gives up the leadoff home run in the 9th inning. And I'm thinking, he's not going to blow the 4-run lead, is he? Now he settled down, got the next 3 guys, and the Brewers went 8-4. I liked what Vinny Rottino, I believe it was, in the broadcast said tonight, and with Murphy. We hadn't talked about this. Murphy likes to bring on the road his closer in the 9th inning, up 4 runs. 4 runs. If you're up 4 runs, the Brewers up 4 runs, he's got no problem bringing in his closer in. The rule is if you have a 3-run lead and you come in and pitch the 9th inning, then you get the save. Now, Devin Williams won't get a save out of it. It ended up being a 3-run game because he gave up the home run. But Murphy doesn't have any problem. If it's a 4-run lead in the 9th, he looks at that as a save chance, even though technically it's not. And I like that. Not taking anything for granted. Don't have a 4-run lead and bring in some guy, your secondary guy, or I'm not going to start naming names, but thinking that game is over in the bottom half of the 9th inning. On the road, 4-run lead, Murphy bringing in his closer. I like that. I love that idea. I love it, man. Let's win that game. Let's not bring some other, because we've seen that before. Now you bring in some guy to close it out, and you end up going your closer anyway. And sometimes you blow the lead in the 9th inning. 4-run lead, I like it. Murphy doesn't take any chances on the road. Crazy things will happen. Brings in his closer. Devin Williams didn't get, I don't care if Devin Williams didn't get the save or not. Bottom line is the guy pitched the 9th inning. About getting victories here, not about statistics, okay? We've had plenty of guys get numbers next to their names. Great numbers, high numbers. And where has that gotten us? Nowhere. Devin Williams, he didn't get the save, but he allowed just 1 run in the 9th inning, and the Brewers were able to get the victory. Bring that closer in, bottom of the 9th inning on the road with a 4-run lead. I like it. I love it, man. I love it. I don't know who else does that, but that's the first I've ever heard of a manager talk about giving up, bringing in a closer with a 4-run lead. Love it. So they got the series win. And, man, they can they're at least 500 on this road trip because they're 3-2 right now, depending what happens on Thursday afternoon. 11:10 with the start on Sirius XM, the SXM app. Search Brewers. Early start. TV 10:30 pregame, but it's an early start for these guys. And then they come home, which I'm sure they like. Well, athletes, they like to sleep in bed a little bit, but an afternoon game early, they're going to get home. They'll be back in Milwaukee by 6:00, and then they play Friday night against the Cincinnati Reds at home. But man, how about it? They dropped 2 of 3 in Washington. They come back to take the first 2 in Atlanta. Excuse me. Chuck Freeman here, Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. When we come back, talk about a couple of injury updates. And where the Brewers are sitting, because I've been talking about the Phillies and Dodgers. They're moving in on the Dodgers. We'll get to that next here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Game time. I love going to baseball games. In the media, I cover a lot of games, but I like to take my kid and Shannon. We go on Sundays, and what we do is we go to the Game Time app. I've downloaded this a couple of years ago, and I love it because, right before game time, those prices start to drop, and you get some great deals. I go there every time, and plus, all in pricing, zone deals. I can pick a section, punch in the section, and I can save some more money that way as well. Flash deals, exclusive in-app deals ahead of the game or event. And it's just not Brewers games. It's concerts, theater, comedy, whatever you want. Game Time is there. Last-minute tickets. Save up to 60% buying last-minute tickets for sports and everything else, like I've talked about. But you got to download the Game Time app. You create an account. You use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. You spend $70 on tickets, you get $20 off. It's that easy. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB, $20 off. But you got to download the Game Time app today. The last bit of tickets, lowest price guarantee. And the seat view, you get a panoramic view, which I like, from your seat in the app before you buy, and you're not fooled by it. Go to Game Time and get your tickets with the Reds coming to town this weekend. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers. And we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Thank you for making us your first listen to every day on Locked On Brewers, whether you download us on the various platforms out there for podcasts, wherever you download your podcasts. We're on Apple, Spotify, you name it. We're on a bunch of different apps. Google, wherever. There's some obscure ones that people have asked me about, and we're on there as well. We're on all those because we're the number one Brewers podcast on the internet, and you great Brewer fans have made us that way. Also, our growing YouTube page. Please subscribe. If you download our podcast on the audio side, subscribe to our YouTube page on YouTube. Go to Locked On Brewers. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. That alerts you every time we drop an episode here on Locked On Brewers. And, of course, follow me on Twitter, Chuck Freeman, FREIMUND. All right. I want to step back a second here. And I was going to talk about, catching the Dodgers and all that. Someone put on Twitter, wrote to me, because I was talking about, the Brewers it's a battle of aces coming up on Wednesday. Freddie Peralta and Chris Sale. And someone said to me, well, Chuck, the Brewers don't have an ace. And you know what? You're right. And I forgot who the guy's name was because I want to give him credit, but I forgot who it was. And maybe they'll remind me once they see the podcast. But yeah, you're right. And I said this all off season. Freddie, when the Brewers lost Corbin Burns, they lost their ace on this team. Freddie Peralta is not an ace. I don't think he'll ever be an ace. He's just not one of those guys. When he goes out there, you can't think, well, this guy's going to shut him down. All the way back to, the Teddy Higuera days, and this is going way back. Teddy Higuera and, the Brewer, Ben Sheets, I thought, an ace. CC, we've had aces, guys who we know are ace. Giovanni, I thought, was an ace. We've had aces on this team. Some of you don't think Giovanni was an ace, but I certainly think he does or was. But yeah, Freddie is not an ace. He is not. And Colin Ray, he's 10-3, but he doesn't have ace stuff. Should the Brewers in the offseason, and I'll say, yeah, should the Brewers in the offseason go out and spend and buy themselves an ace? And of course, everybody's going to say yes, but of course we know that we're going to, the Brewers are going to cry poor that, they can't afford to pay big time money for pitching. That's why they got to grow the Brandon Woodruffs and Corbin Burns. And I'm not going to, Brandon Woodruff is, by the way, is an ace, but I'm not going to put him in that ace role just yet because he's coming off missing the season, had injury problems with that shoulder last year too. So basically, Woodruff is coming off 2 years of shoulder injuries, okay, where he's missed a significant amount of time. Yeah, he's an ace when healthy before the injury. We'll see how he is when he gets back. All right, we'll give him time. So we won't put that pressure of being an ace on him, even though he did have ace material. You had 1A and 1B with Burns and Woodruff. But yeah, Freddie is not an ace. But I would love for them to go out and spend some money and do whatever. And Gasser, somebody asked me, Gasser, I again, young guy, I got to see more of Gasser, who's coming off surgery anyway. Another guy we got to let marinate out there and see how things go with him. But does he have ace stuff? Well, the stuff we saw of him was pretty good, but we're going to give it a little bit more time. But yeah, the Brewers, in addition to a bat in that middle of the order, they lack an ace at the top of this rotation. They do. They lack a legitimate guy who you can count on. When you're going through a funk like the Brewers have gone through a couple of times this year, a guy like Freddie steps to the hill. Well, I would love Freddie to be that guy, but as I said, he's not. But, that guy can, like Corbin Burns, goes to the hill, and he's going to get the job done. And I know some of you are going to say, well, he didn't get it done in the postseason last year. Okay. But, Corbin Burns, Cy Young Award winner, pitching great for Baltimore. Corbin Burns is an ace, was an ace, is an ace, is a great, great pitcher. Whatever he gets in the free agent market deserves every dime of it because he is great. And I would love for the Brewers to have an ace at the top of the rotation. That's when you want to win a World Series and you have visions going far in the playoffs, to have an ace pitch game 1, possibly 4, and possibly 7. That's what the Brewers need. Do you trust Freddie pitching do you trust Freddie pitching 1, 4, and 7? If the Brewers would go that route, the old school guys would go 1, 4, and 7. But would you trust Freddie to go 1, 4, and 7? Certainly not. There's nobody on the staff, and all due respect to Colin Ray, who's had a great year, just a great year, doesn't have ace material. He's not an ace on the staff. The Brewers do not have an ace. That was correct. But I would love for them to have one. Jake Mizorowski, don't know. Someone might be thinking or writing as we speak, Jake Mizorowski, don't know. Just don't know. Hasn't pitched to major league inning just yet. All right, Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We'll talk about that division lead, turn ahead to Thursday, and give you a couple of injury updates coming up next here on this edition of Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. SupplyHouse. SupplyHouse, some of you guys who get up early in the morning, see you on the road, you're going out to work sun up to sundown. SupplyHouse.com, the reliable way to order plumbing, h-vac, electrical products online. Easy to use website, packed with resources to help you get the job done each and every day. Shop a complete inventory, over 200,000 parts, over 400 top brands. Get your order delivered right to your door every time. Consistency, professionalism. When you need customer service, you'll talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trademaster program. Every Trademaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, discounts in every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from the free membership at SupplyHouse.com/T-M. Order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from everywhere and anywhere. Just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. This is Chuck Freeman on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Down the stretch we come here on Locked On Brewers. Yeah, the Brewers 11-10. I believe this is their earliest start of the season. 11-10 with that first pitch. Sirius XM, the SXM app, search Brewers. Get all 162 of Brewers baseball. The Brewers assured of a winning road trip, and with their victory and the Phillies coming from behind and beating Los Angeles, the Brewers now have moved into a virtual tie in the loss column with the LA Dodgers. A virtual tie with the Dodgers in the loss column. I'm going to check that one more time. Yes, they each have 49 losses. Now, the Dodgers got 2 more wins, but at this point, you always got to look at the loss column because, the Dodgers have played Brewers. They have 66 wins. The Brewers seed in the National League. All important National League second seed. So how about that? So they would be one game out overall, but in a virtual tie with the Phillies. Phillies, they are 3 games out in the loss column with the Phillies. Schwarber had a big night for the Phillies in their win against the Dodgers. All right. 11-10, the first pitch, DL Hall getting closer. According to Murphy, and DL Hall has not pitched a major league game since April 20th. He had 4 starts prior to that, was not all that impressive. Get another young guy. They don't know what his role is going to be. He's not starting. So they'll find a place for him down in the bullpen. We'll see what the decision is once they add DL Hall and they activate him off the injured list, because they say he's due to come back, and I feel like he's been rehabbing for the last 6 months. Piamps, I talked about how terrific he was, and I want to tell you about a new documentary that's coming out on the 82 Brewers. I just found this out. The 1982 Brewers, the only Brewers team to make it to the World Series, I guess, in theaters around the Milwaukee area at least, a documentary called Just a Bit Outside on the 82 Brewers. The closest the Brewers have been to winning a world championship, losing in 7 to the St. Louis Cardinals when the Brewers were back in the American League back then. All right, that's going to do it. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Brewers your first listen to every day. Your second listen, when you're done here, go to Locked On MLB. My guy Sully's going to have all the information on his podcast, Locked On MLB, about everything going on in Major League Baseball. I've made a few guest appearances on Sully's show. Check it out, Locked On MLB. Until then, we'll see you a little bit later on Thursday night after the game, talking Brewers baseball and hopefully getting a sweep. Man, I'm in a great mood. Let's keep this thing going with a sweep in Atlanta coming up on Thursday morning. Chuck Freeman, Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Again, get us on YouTube, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell that alerts you every time we drop an episode on Locked On Brewers. Go to YouTube, or you go to our various platforms where we download the podcast. Go to Google, Spotify, Apple. Please hit your alert there, subscribe. All the content, always free here on Locked On Brewers. Have yourself a great Thursday, everybody.